My boy Jason cut me out of his wedding completely, but then had the nerve to mail me an $80,000 bill to cover his fancy celebration and that Florida Keys honeymoon of theirs. He even wrote at the bottom, "You should thank me for allowing you to help pay for this." All I could do was smile as I felt my rage slowly turning into ice cold resolve. That perfect, expensive wedding he was dreaming about was going to turn into his worst nightmare. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. I was sitting there in my kitchen on that quiet late November afternoon in Riverside, watching the sunlight come through my old curtains when everything changed. That thick, fancy envelope showed up in my morning mail with my boy Jason's neat handwriting across the front, and I figured, after all those months of him not talking to me, maybe this was finally my wedding invitation. I ran my thumb along that sealed edge, feeling this little flutter of hope in my chest despite all the bad blood between us. When I carefully opened it up, I expected to see some beautiful wedding announcement with the date and place, maybe even a little note asking if I'd walk him down that aisle like we used to joke about back in the day. But there wasn't any invitation in there at all. What tumbled out instead was a whole stack of paperwork. Bills, all neat and official looking, adding up to $80,000. I looked through every line item on those pages. 50 grand for renting some huge mansion outside Riverside, one of those places with perfectly trimmed gardens and fancy crystal light fixtures hanging everywhere. 20,000 more for all the food and drinks, including wine shipped in from overseas and lobster they were flying in straight from Maine. Then another $10,000 for their honeymoon suite over in Key West, the kind with its own private stretch of beach. And right there at the bottom, Jason had written me a note in his own handwriting. "Dad," it said, "after all the trouble you've brought to this family, you should be thankful I'm even letting you help pay for this. This is what you owe us. Get that check to me quickly. Samantha and I are depending on this money." I just sat there staring at those words, feeling how smooth and cold that expensive paper was between my fingers. Trouble? He was talking about the same so-called problems he'd thrown at me during our last big fight, blaming me for not making it further up the ladder in my engineering job, for the simple life we'd lived after his mother passed away. My hands started shaking a little as I put that note back down, and for a second, all those numbers on the bills got blurry. Right there next to me on the table was this old picture of Jason when he was little, missing his front teeth and grinning like crazy after one of his little league games, his small hand holding tight to mine. I couldn't understand how that sweet little boy had grown up into this man who treated me like some kind of walking bank account, who wouldn't even let me come to his wedding because I didn't fit the fancy image he wanted. The shock hit me like ice water, making my chest feel tight and heavy. I squeezed that note up into a ball, hearing it crinkle like autumn leaves, but then I smoothed it back out, flat again, on the table. I wasn't going to let my anger just take over without thinking this through. I pushed myself up from that chair, my old knees complaining about the movement, and suddenly my kitchen felt way too small, like those walls were closing in on me with all the memories of family meals from better times. I walked over to my sink and splashed some cold water on my face, but it didn't do anything to wash away that stinging hurt inside. Jason figured he could just cut me completely out of his life while still reaching into my savings account, money I'd worked overtime for years to save up, scraping by after I lost Catherine to that terrible cancer back in 2020. He'd called me exactly once after her funeral, and his voice was so cold when he said, "You should have done more for all of us, Dad." I came back to the table and picked up my father's old pocket watch, this family treasure that had been passed down through generations of men who knew what hard work meant. It kept ticking away steadily in my hand, reminding me of family ties that were supposed to last forever. But Jason had cut ours clean through, hadn't he? He banned me from his wedding because Samantha had whispered in his ear that having a simple retiree like me there would embarrass them in front of all their high-tech executive friends. That's when I smiled. But it wasn't a happy smile. It was slow and bitter, as all that hurt started twisting itself into something much sharper and more focused. I set that bill to one side, folded it up nice and neat, and felt this little spark catch fire deep down inside me as a plan started taking shape in the back of my mind. I looked at those numbers on the bill one more time, and they seemed to be mocking me. But slowly my anger started cooling off and turning into something clearer and colder. If Jason thought he could push me around and manipulate me like this, he had another thing coming. I knew that going straight at him and having it out wouldn't get me anywhere. He'd just brush me off like he always did. But I could do some digging, find out where their perfect little plan had weak spots. My old laptop was sitting right there on the kitchen counter, covered in dust, but ready to work. It was time to figure out what they were really up to behind all this fancy wedding planning. That little spark stayed with me as I picked up the photograph again, holding it in my hands. Jason's young face looked back at me, so innocent and full of possibilities, from that day we spent at Riverside Park when he was only 8 years old. He'd climbed right up onto my lap when this sudden thunderstorm rolled in, burying his head against my shoulder while the rain hammered against our car windows. "Don't worry, Dad," he'd said, his voice all muffled against my shirt. "You're the strongest person I know." I'd held him close that day, promising him I'd always keep him safe, while Catherine sat there watching us with that beautiful warm smile of hers. Now I was walking back and forth across my kitchen, listening to those old floorboards creak under my feet, smelling the stale coffee from my morning cup still hanging in the air. All those memories kept flooding back without me asking for them, weekend after weekend, teaching him how to swing a baseball bat at the local field, hearing his laughter ring out as he ran around those bases. Back then, the three of us were less like a solid wall against whatever the world could throw at us. But everything changed after Catherine died. Jason was 25 when she died, and by now he was 29, already well established in some tech company, and he started pulling further and further away from me. "You let her down, Dad," he'd accused me one night over the phone in 2021, his voice full of bitter resentment. "If you'd made more money, maybe we could have gotten her better treatments." I'd swallowed down all that pain and tried to remind him about all those insurance company battles, about the second mortgage I'd taken out on the house to help pay for her medical care, but he wouldn't listen to any of it. All he could see were what he called my failures, the modest little house we lived in, my steady but ordinary engineering job. Last Christmas was really what finished things between us. I'd driven over to their sleek downtown Riverside apartment with my arms full of homemade tamales, the same kind Catherine used to make for the holidays. Samantha barely looked up from her phone, whispering something to Jason that made him smirk at me. "Dad, we're eating vegan now," he'd said, dismissing me like I was nothing. "And honestly, you just showing up here without calling first, it's really awkward for us." I'd left their place early that night, driving home through a blur of streetlights, feeling like some old relic that didn't belong in their shiny, perfect world. Now, this bill in front of me was the final slap in the face, demanding that I pay for their expensive party while they pushed me completely out of their lives. I stood there by window with my hands balled up into fists, watching the bare branches sway in my yard, and I could feel that anger building up inside me like a fire that just kept getting hotter. The nerve of that boy, treating me like I was some kind of burden on his life, then having the gall to expect me to thank him for the privilege of paying his bills. Well, I wasn't going to be anybody's victim anymore, not after everything I'd been through. I'd raised that kid all by myself after Catherine passed, giving up trips and nice things so he could have his shot at a good life. And there was Samantha with her expensive purses and all those social media posts showing off, encouraging his greedy behavior. This betrayal of theirs needed to have some serious consequences. Standing there listening to the rain start tapping against my window like it was matching the storm brewing inside me, I made myself a promise, silently but with everything I had in me, that I was going to turn their perfect wedding day into a lesson they'd remember for the rest of their lives. I turned away from that window with my determination getting harder than steel. For just a second, I wondered if maybe I was getting too old for this kind of fight. But I pushed that thought right out of my head. Getting justice isn't about how old you are, it's about keeping your dignity intact. With that settled in my mind, I walked over and grabbed my laptop from the counter, feeling that cool metal under my hands as I got ready to do some serious investigating. My laptop started humming as it woke up in the fading light of my kitchen, throwing this blue glow across my cluttered table. I settled down in my chair with the rain drumming steadily outside now and clicked open my internet browser with a clear purpose in mind. Jason had locked down all his social media accounts so nobody could see them, but Samantha hadn't been so careful. That girl just loved showing off their fancy lifestyle to anybody who'd look. I scrolled through all her posts, and every single one felt like a knife twisting in my gut. "Can't wait for our dream wedding at the Grandview Manor," she'd written. "Living that blessed luxury life." The date jumped right out at me. December 8th, 2024, which was only a few weeks away. Her pictures showed off this huge mansion with its grand ballroom all set up for practice runs, those crystal chandeliers sparkling like a jewelry store. I took a sip from my glass of that cheap red wine I'd been saving for a special occasion, letting its sharp taste help me focus better. It was time for action instead of just feeling sorry for myself. I grabbed a notepad and started writing everything down. The venue was called Grandview Manor and cost $50,000 to rent. The catering company was called Premier Catering, and they were bragging about serving farm-to-table food to 200 guests. Their photographer was some high-priced professional named Nina Cross, and I could see her portfolio linked right there in Samantha's comment section. "Gorgeous photos coming our way," Samantha had written with a bunch of little heart symbols. I was having this internal argument with myself about whether I should just call Jason up and have it out with him face to face. But no, that would just give him the satisfaction of hanging up on me or dismissing me like he always did. It would be much better to work from the shadows and make him feel like he was losing control of everything, which was what scared him most. I kept opening new tabs on my computer, the wedding planner David Sterling's website, where his biography was going on about seamless events for our most discriminating clients. I found a mutual contact on that LinkedIn website that confirmed he was handling everything. Some old work buddy of Jason's had liked to post about booking the whole thing. Little details about their honeymoon kept showing up from some travel agency's advertisements. The Key West Beach Resort with an oceanfront suite, all of it being paid for with that bill they'd sent me. My anger flared up all over again when I saw a video Samantha had shared of herself trying on wedding dresses with Jason grinning beside her like an idiot. "Daddy's paying for the party. Indirectly," she joked in the comments section, followed by one of those winking emoji things. Indirectly? The sheer nerve of that girl just fed my anger even more. I started cross-referencing all their vendors and building myself a complete list. The flower shop, the disc jockey, even the limousine service they'd hired. The amount of money they were throwing around was absolutely staggering, way more than Jason's salary could handle without my contribution to make it work. For a moment, I hesitated and wondered if maybe this revenge plan was going too far, if I was risking what little family connection we had left. But then I remembered that condescending note he'd written again, all that privileged attitude, and my doubts just disappeared completely. This whole thing was about my self-respect and teaching him that being greedy comes with consequences. My hands got steady on the keyboard as I found David Sterling's contact phone number. He was the wedding planner right at the center of this whole mess. I took a deep breath and made up my mind that it was time to make that call and start pulling apart their perfect little plan, one thread at a time. I picked up my phone with my fingers hovering over those number buttons. The phone rang twice before this polished voice answered, smooth as marble that's been buffed to a shine. "David Sterling Events, this is David speaking. How can I make your day extraordinary?" I leaned against my kitchen counter with that phone receiver cool against my ear, making sure to keep my breathing steady. "Hello, David. This is Daniel Brooks. I'm Jason Brooks' father, and I'm the one who's supposed to be paying the bill for his wedding." There was a pause, and then his voice got all warm and friendly. "Mr. Brooks, Jason told me you'd probably be calling to take care of the final payments. We're absolutely thrilled that you're contributing to such a special event. The Grandview Manor is completely booked up, and Samantha's vision is really coming together beautifully. I let him go on for a while about flower arrangements and string quartets while my mind got sharp as a razor blade. Actually, David, I'd rather talk about this face to face. Could we meet up tomorrow? I've got some details I need to clarify. He agreed right away and suggested his downtown Riverside office at 10 in the morning. I hung up the phone, and that clicking sound echoed in my quiet room. Then I poured myself another glass of wine, swirling it around while I pictured the look that would be on his face when the truth finally hit him. I was done hiding behind notes and bills. I leaned back in my chair, feeling that adrenaline pumping through my whole body. This meeting with David was going to be my first step, and I needed it to be completely ready for it. I spent the rest of that evening going over the bill again, writing down all the important numbers so I'd have the facts right at my fingertips. Before I went to bed, I picked out a clean sweater and some decent slacks. Nothing too fancy, but nice enough to look like I meant business. As I lay down that night, I could feel my plan getting solid like the foundation of a house. The next morning, I got up early with my coffee in a travel mug and my keys in my hand, ready to head out and get this thing started. I drove through the light morning traffic with those dead leaves swirling around like confetti on my windshield. When I stopped at a red light, I felt this brief moment of hesitation. Was this the point where I couldn't turn back anymore? But I pushed that thought away and stepped on the gas when the light turned green. David's office was in this sleek building right off Commerce Avenue, all made of glass and chrome, completely different from the old brick building where my engineering firm used to be. I parked my car and walked inside, breathing in that sterile lobby air that smelled like expensive men's cologne. David came out to meet me with a firm handshake, wearing a perfectly tailored suit with his tie knotted just right. "Mr. Brooks, please come in. Would you like some coffee?" He led me over to this plush chair across from his desk, which was covered with fabric samples and contracts. There was a framed photograph of a happy couple standing under a gazebo that caught my attention, and it stirred up this quiet determination inside me. That kind of joy wasn't going to be Jason's, not on my money. We got settled in our chairs, and he pulled out the file folder. So that $80,000 covers absolutely everything: the venue, all the catering, even the deposit for their honeymoon. I leaned forward in my chair and kept my voice steady. "Did he really tell you that? David, did Jason mention that he's banned me from this wedding? That I'm not even invited to this party I'm supposedly funding?" His eyes went wide, and the pen slipped from his fingers. "Banned? No, he just said family contributions were handled." "This is awkward." "Awkward," I repeated sharply. "Try insulting. He sent me a bill with a note saying I should be grateful after I raised him alone after everything." David shifted uncomfortably, rubbing his temple. "I don't know what to say. The contracts are signed, but without full payment, we can't proceed. Deposits are non-refundable, but the balance—" "Exactly," I cut him off. "Tell Jason the wedding stops until he talks to me directly. No money from me. And if he pushes back, remind him how fragile these plans can be." He nodded slowly, looking stunned. "I'll call him today. This changes everything." As I left, I heard him mutter, "That arrogant kid," under his breath. It fueled me, my first taste of the chaos starting to brew. I stepped outside feeling the ripple effects beginning like a stone hitting still water. Standing on the sidewalk, I felt strong but knew I couldn't do this alone. David was just the start. Jason wouldn't back down easily, and I needed trusted allies. Tyler's name came to mind, his number still in my phone, just years of silence. Jason's old best friend who he dumped when ambition took over, now working as a detective with photography skills. I remembered 12-year-old Tyler at our door after his parents' divorce, Catherine making him hot chocolate while Jason and I played cards to distract him. I dialed before doubt could creep in. "Tyler, it's Daniel Brooks. Been a long time." His voice came through surprised but warm. "Mr. T? Wow, yeah. How've you been? Everything okay?" "Not exactly. Jason's getting married, but it's complicated. Can we meet? I need your expertise. Heard you're a private detective now with photography skills." He chuckled dryly. "Word gets around. Sure, the old cafe on Oak Street in an hour." An hour later, I sat at a corner table, breathing in fresh-baked scones while watching leaves fall outside. Um, Tyler arrived taller than I remembered, with sharp detective eyes and a camera bag. We shook hands firmly. "Mr. T, you look good. Sorry about Catherine. She was like a mom to me, too." "Thanks, Tyler. Call me Daniel." I slid him coffee. "Jason banned me from his wedding, but sent an $80,000 bill. I'm not paying. I'm fighting back." His face hardened. "That sounds like him. He ditched me years ago when I wouldn't fake a job reference. Said I was holding him back." "I've heard similar stories about how he's exploited others." "Oh yeah." Tyler leaned in, voice heavy with old hurt. "In college, he borrowed my project ideas and claimed them as his own. When I confronted him, he ghosted me. Samantha's the same. All about image." We planned over coffee refills. He'd document the wedding from outside, capturing any fallout with photos and video for public leverage if needed. Old Mrs. Coleman from the neighborhood waved from the counter. She still remembered us from the old days, stirring memories. "Remember when you and Jason pranked her with fake snow in July?" Tyler grinned, then faded. "Those days are gone. He changed." "So did I, but this alliance is real." We shook hands again, ideas swirling like steam from our cups. "What if we need recordings? Logs?" I asked. He nodded thoughtfully. "Come by tonight, bring your equipment, and let's prepare properly." Tyler grinned, eyes sparking. "Deal, Daniel. 8 o'clock." That evening, he arrived with his toolkit as downpour turned my porch light hazy. "Ready to level up," he said, stepping inside and shaking off his coat. We moved to the living room where I cleared the coffee table. Those dim lamps threw long shadows across my worn-out rugs, and I handed him a steaming mug of coffee with the vapor rising up like some kind of promise. "Show me how I can protect myself here." "Recordings, cameras. All of it." Tyler started unpacking his gadgets, a tiny recorder, some hidden cameras, even phone apps for keeping call logs. "First thing you need to know are the legal basics," he said in that steady, teaching voice of his. "In this state, we've got one-party consent for recordings. You just hit this button right in the middle of a call." I practiced on his test setup while he showed me the tricks Jason might try to pull. The gaslighting, the way he'd deflect blame onto other people. "Like when he blamed you for his mother's treatments not working properly," Tyler said quietly. "I remember you selling your car just to help pay those medical bills." He completely ignored that sacrifice. Those words hit me hard, bringing back a painful memory of Catherine lying there in that hospital bed with her hands so weak in mine, and Jason storming out of the room after he'd accused me of not fighting hard enough for her. I shared that moment briefly, my voice catching in my throat. She deserved so much better from all of us. "You gave her everything you had," Tyler replied, his voice gentle but firm. "I owe you more than I can ever repay. After my parents split up, you let me stay here and even tutored me in math. Jason just laughed it off and called me weak for needing help." We raised our coffee mugs quietly in a toast, not to revenge, but to justice. He walked me through where to place the cameras. "Angle it right here by the door so you can catch his face clearly." I tested one of them, and the video feed came through crystal clear on my phone, giving me this surge of strength as the image got steady. But while that device was humming away, a new worry crept into my head. What if Jason called tonight because he could sense something was changing? Jason didn't call that night, but I knew this quiet wouldn't last much longer. The next day dragged by in tense waiting. I kept checking my phone, testing those cameras, and took a walk around the block trying to calm my nerves down. Every car that drove past made me jump, thinking it might be him. By evening, I was completely on edge when my phone finally buzzed with his name, lighting up the screen. The recording device hummed softly in my hand, with its steady green light when my phone started buzzing on the table, cutting through the evening quiet like a sharp blade. I was halfway through making tea, with the kettle just starting to whistle and steam curling up in lazy swirls. The screen showed Jason's name. I let it keep ringing, watching those vibrations make the phone skitter across the wooden surface, while a cold draft from the window matched the tension tying knots in my stomach. It went to voicemail, then immediately buzzed again. Samantha this time. I ignored that one too, pouring hot water over my tea bag and breathing in that calming chamomile smell while I remembered Tyler's advice. Record everything that happens. Their own words will become your ammunition. A few days had gone by since our planning session, filled with quiet preparations, installing those apps, testing camera angles all around the house, even taking walks around the neighborhood to clear my head. But now the storm was finally breaking loose. The notifications kept piling up, 3 voicemails and urgent text messages flashing on my screen. I sat down at my kitchen table, under that dim overhead light, casting shadows on the walls, and played the first message with my finger, hovering before I pressed the button. Dad, it's Jason. There's some kind of misunderstanding about the payments. The wedding planner called and said, "You pulled out. Call me back right away. We need to get this sorted out." His voice started out composed, but I could hear an edge creeping in like gravel crunching underfoot. I played it again, noticing the panic bubbling underneath his words. How he called it a misunderstanding, as if his bill and his ban were just accidents. The second message. Daniel, this is Samantha. Jason's really upset about this. The vendors are threatening to cancel everything without your contribution. Don't do this to us. It's just petty. Her tone was clipped and superior, like she was scolding a little child. Petty. That word stung, but I found myself smiling faintly as I sipped my tea. Tyler had warned me this would happen, desperation disguised as accusations. The third voicemail was from Jason again, with the urgency really ramping up. Dad, seriously, you need to pick up the phone. Everything's falling apart here. You owe us this money after everything that's happened. There was a pause that hinted at old grudges, and I could hear his heavy breathing. I listened to that one twice more, analyzing how his voice kept getting higher and the implied threats he was making. Rumors must be spreading around town. David had clearly done his part. Then I got a call from Mrs. Anderson, an old mutual friend from down the street, her voice sounding hesitant when I answered briefly. Daniel, I've been hearing whispers at the club, something about Jason's wedding having troubles. People are saying there are money issues. I hope you're doing okay. Her words gave me this unexpected twist of satisfaction. Public whispers were already starting. I hadn't expected the ripple effects to spread so far so quickly. It fueled this surge of control after years of being pushed to the sidelines. But as I set the phone down, another voicemail came in with Jason's voice actually cracking this time. If you don't fix this situation, you're going to regret it. That threat just hung there in the air, replaying in my mind as I stared at the screen. That threatening tone was still echoing in my head when the phone rang again the next evening, insistent like a heartbeat in my living room, where I paced back and forth with the recorder app open and ready to go. I gripped that device tightly, letting it ring 4 times before I answered, using that deliberate pause to unsettle him. Hello, Jason? Dad, finally! What the hell is going on here? David says you're refusing to pay. You're sabotaging our wedding. His accusation burst out with his voice pitched high from frustration. I kept breathing steadily, feeling that soft carpet under my feet. Sabotaging? You're the one who banned me from attending. You sent me a bill like I was some kind of sponsor instead of family. Remember that note you wrote? Be grateful, you said. There was a beat of silence, then he exploded. Look, it's not like that at all. Samantha's friends, that whole crowd, your retired dad, you just wouldn't fit in with them. But the money? You still owe us that. After Mom died 4 years ago, after all the trouble you put this family through since then? That dig about Catherine cut into me like a sharp thorn, but I kept my cool and made sure to record every single word he said. So that's how it is? I raised you all by myself, sold everything I owned to pay for her medical care. You blamed me back then. Now you're ignoring me completely. No, Jason, you're not getting a dime from me. You're destroying everything, he yelled, his words coming out raw and desperate. Samantha's absolutely furious about this. The catering company wants the remaining payments. The estate is holding our date, but threatening cancellation fees for the deposits we've already made. Just fix this mess. I stopped talking for a moment, drawing strength from that pocket watch sitting on my side table, its steady ticking reminding me of lasting dignity. You fix what you destroyed first. Start talking to me like I'm your son instead of some bank account. Then, Samantha's voice suddenly cut into the conversation. Speakerphone? I realized what was happening. Daniel, this is completely ridiculous. We're trying to build a life together here. Your petty behavior could ruin everything we've planned. Just think about how embarrassing this will be. Her interruption made the tension spike even higher, with her voice dripping with contempt. Embarrassing? You mean like banning your own father-in-law from the wedding? I'm thinking about that bill you sent me, about the honeymoon you expect me to pay for while you shut me out completely. Yeah. Jason jumped back into the conversation, getting defensive. It's your responsibility, Dad. Family members contribute to these things. Just admit it. You're jealous of how successful I've become. That confession just slipped right out of him, using jealousy as his excuse, and it hit me like a revelation that exposed his massive ego. I fired back firmly. Success that's built on using other people? Not anymore. It isn't. The phone line crackled with his heavy breathing. You're going to regret doing this to us. We're finished. He hung up suddenly, leaving that silence ringing in my ears with his words still echoing, a key slip that showed his vulnerability and sharpened my determination even more. That weakness stayed in my thoughts as I walked back and forth down my hallway with the house quiet, except for the refrigerator's faint humming. A few minutes later, my phone chimed with a text alert. Tyler here. Update for you. Vendors are demanding their payments. Rumors are spreading all over the estate. Sending photos now. I opened that attachment and saw blurry pictures of workers stopping their setup work, with a florist van just sitting there looking uncertain. Those images gave me energy, but then Jason's text messages started flooding in. Selfish old man, ruining our special day because of your ego. Short, stabbing accusations glowed on my screen. I scrolled through them with my heart beating steady when my neighbor called. Mr. Davis from across the fence. Daniel, I saw Jason screaming at some delivery guy yesterday. Rude as anything, demanding discounts like he owned the whole place. His voice sounded gruff but supportive. I heard about this whole wedding situation. If you need someone in your corner, I'm right here. Remember how he snubbed all of us at that block party, acting like he was too good for the neighborhood? I leaned back against my wall with the phone pressed to my ear. Thanks, Davis. What exactly happened with that delivery situation? He let out a dry chuckle. Some guy dropped off invitations or whatever. Jason tore into him over a tiny crease gate, saying, "Do you have any idea who I am?" Samantha just stood there watching the whole thing. People around here are talking about it. Word is that vendors are backing out. That story painted Jason's arrogance so clearly. A snub that echoed exactly how he'd been treating me. I really appreciate you telling me this. It keeps me motivated. No problem at all, Davis replied warmly. You've got this whole community behind you here. He doesn't have that. We ended our call and I sent Tyler a text back. Got more intel from my neighbor. Jason's pushing everyone away. His response came quickly. Perfect timing. Things are escalating and their preparations are falling apart. But as I put my phone down, a new message from some unknown number appeared, probably from one of their vendors, suggesting even deeper problems were brewing. Mr. Brooks, regarding wedding cancellation penalties. The message cut off there, sending a fresh wave of urgency through me as that ticking clock on my mantle seemed to be counting down towards something that couldn't be stopped. Gray morning light filtered through my curtains on December 8th, 2024, their wedding day, while rain started tapping against my windows like restless fingers drumming on glass. I'd gotten up early with that clock's ticking from the night before still ringing in my ears, reminding me of all the tension that had been building over the past week. Those days had passed in a steady pattern of quiet watching, keeping track of Tyler's updates, ignoring Jason's increasingly frantic text messages, and taking long walks through Riverside's crisp air to strengthen my resolve against any moments of doubt. Now, as I checked the weather on my phone, those forecasts of heavy rain seemed to mirror the storm I'd set in motion, like nature was symbolically washing away all their fake appearances. I made my coffee, breathing in that rich smell as it filled my kitchen, and sat down at the table with my phone ready. Tyler's first message came at 7 in the morning. I'm at the estate now. Vendors are either showing up or staying away. Pictures coming your way. I took slow sips from my warm mug as photos started coming through. Florists unloading their vans only to pack half the flower arrangements back up, their faces tight with frustration under their umbrellas. Deposit problems? Read one caption. They're packing up and leaving. The disaster was unfolding in real-time snapshots. A catering truck just sitting there idling, workers putting crates of unused dishes and silverware back in boxes, rain turning the driveway into a slippery, shiny mess. Wedding guests started showing up around noon, with Tyler's sneaky photos showing confused groups huddled under tents, umbrellas opening up like dark flowers everywhere. Overheard someone asking, "Where's all the setup?" his next message said. I ignored a bunch of calls from Jason, letting my phone buzz like a trapped insect on the table. The voicemails kept piling up. I played one where his voice sounded frantic. "Dad, send that money right now. Everything's completely falling apart here. The estate manager is threatening to shut the whole thing down." I could hear the desperation cracking through his voice, a far cry from how arrogant he'd been before. More photos kept coming. The grand hall was only half decorated, with chairs scattered around randomly and no sign of that string quartet they'd planned. Then came a shot that twisted something deep inside my chest. Samantha in her wedding dress, looking completely devastated, with rain streaking down the mansion windows behind her like tears. For a brief moment, doubt flickered through me. Was this too harsh, turning their special day into a public spectacle? But then I remembered that condescending bill and the ban that had cut deeper than any rainstorm, and my doubt melted away into quiet satisfaction. Real justice isn't supposed to be gentle. By afternoon, Tyler was reporting, guests are just wandering around, some are leaving early, rumors are spreading about a family fight over money. I walked back and forth across my room with rain drumming steadily outside, picturing the humiliation happening miles away. Another voicemail from Jason came through, this time pleading, "Please, Dad, just wire the money. The guests are actually laughing at us. Help us out here." I could hear a guest's voice in Tyler's audio clip saying, "This is a complete disaster, such poor planning." The downpour got heavier, with sheets of water making my yard look blurry, as if nature itself was amplifying this reckoning. But then my phone started ringing again with Jason's name flashing, his voice right on the edge when it went to voicemail mid-ring. That desperate plea was still hanging in the air when I heard sudden heavy pounding on my door, insistent knocking cutting through the storm. Rain was dripping from my roof edges in steady streams, forming puddles on my porch steps. I walked over slowly, looking through the peephole to see Jason and Samantha, both completely disheveled and soaked through their hastily thrown-on coats, with their hair plastered down and their faces pale and exhausted. I opened the door just a crack, feeling cool mist spray inside. "What are you two doing here?" Jason pushed forward with water dripping from his sleeves onto my entry rug, making a small puddle like an unwelcome invasion. "Dad, you have to let us in. The wedding's completely ruined. All the vendors left. The guests scattered when the rain got bad. It's become a complete joke now." Samantha huddled behind him with her makeup all smeared, her wedding gown showing ridiculously from under her coat. "Daniel, please, just wire us the money. We can still salvage something from this mess." I stepped aside reluctantly and closed the door against that howling wind. They stood there dripping in my hallway, with the familiar smell of my home clashing against their desperate energy. Salvage what? After you banned me from attending and demanded I pay like some silent business partner? Jason ran his hand through his soaked hair, his voice starting to break. "It was a mistake. Samantha's idea about the image, but now everything's collapsed completely. Help us out, Dad, for old time's sake." I crossed my arms, staying steady despite feeling that emotional tug. A memory hit me during that pause, Jason as a teenager after Catherine's funeral, accusing me of being weak while I buried my grief in work. It fueled my resolve. Old times, like when you blamed me for Mom's death? When you ignored me unless you needed cash? Samantha jumped in, her tone shaky for once, with vulnerability finally cracking through her usual attitude. "We didn't mean it like that. It's the stress talking. We've already put down deposits everywhere. Without your payment, we'll lose everything we've already paid. Just think about us for a minute." "Think about you?" I repeated back, calmly but pointedly. "Would either of you value me at all without my wallet? Answer me that honestly." Jason hesitated, his eyes shifting around. Of course we would. Your family, but success means having certain standards. Please, just make the transfer. That admission about standards over family bonds hung heavy in the air, exposing how shallow everything really was. No, Jason, this is what happens when actions have consequences. Greed comes with a price tag. He started begging then, his voice getting higher. You're destroying our lives. The guests were whispering about us. The vendors were making fun of us. Just fix this situation. Do it for your son. Samantha grabbed onto his arm tightly, whispering something urgent in his ear. But I just shook my head at both of them. Get out of here. Maybe you'll learn something from all this mess. As I walked toward the door to open it, Jason's last words came spilling out, completely raw with emotion. Hold on, Dad. I'm sorry about it. All of it. Everything I did. The rain was roaring outside as I shut the door on them at last, hearing their footsteps disappearing back into that storm, with my determination lingering like the echo of his apology. That apologetic echo gradually faded into quiet as I turned around and dropped into my armchair by the window, watching rain streak down the glass in disappearing patterns. Their car headlights cut through the twilight before they vanished completely, leaving my house wrapped in peaceful silence. The following days turned into a blur of thinking things through, taking calls from nosy neighbors, working through all the emotional wreckage, and even burning that original bill in my fireplace one quiet evening, watching its ashes become a symbolic letting go. By the end of the week, Tyler sent me confirmation. Complete meltdown. The estate gave back some money, but their reputations are destroyed. All the buzz actually got me new detective clients because of the drama. I called him up, hearing the warmth crackle through the phone line. Daniel, you actually pulled it off. My photos show those empty tents, guests running away, and Jason's social circle is all talking about how his arrogance finally caught up with him. I settled back in my chair, glancing at an open photo album on my table with faded pictures from happier times. Touching, but not overwhelming. I really appreciate all your help, Tyler. It feels liberating somehow. He chuckled softly. Happy to help anytime. Have you heard anything from him since then? Not since that night, but maybe he'll actually learn from this experience. We talked about old pranks we used to pull, and the conversation shifted to future possibilities. Maybe a trip somewhere now that I felt unburdened. Later, I got an unexpected message. Mrs. Anderson sent me an email, apparently inspired by all the neighborhood rumors. Daniel, watching you take a stand reminded me to appreciate genuine relationships. Want to grab coffee sometime soon? It made me feel warm inside, new friendships growing out of all that chaos. I raised my coffee mug in a solitary toast, muttering to myself, here's to getting my dignity back. My home felt more complete now, not because of material things, but because of restored self-respect. Jason's harsh lesson might sting him for a while, but real growth often hurts at first. Those hints of genuine regret in his voice suggested that maybe some important seeds had been planted. When the rain finally stopped, I stepped outside into that crisp, clean air with sunlight breaking through the clouds, feeling like a brand new path was opening up ahead of me. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. And as always, thank you for watching.